We're talking Michigan recruiting. The Wolverines, they got a home game this weekend against Wisconsin, which means recruits are going to be on campus. So we got E.J. Holland of the Wolverine. We're going to break that down. We're also going to talk about some flip targets. And Charles Woodson Jr. is now a target for the Wolverine. So we're going to break it all down. But first, Michigan fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in E.J. Holland from the Wolverine. And we're going to talk big visit weekend, but first, Dorian Barney, who committed to Michigan in a wild commitment video. You guys can go watch that right here on this channel. That was back in July. He made his commitment, and now he is flipped to Ole Miss. So what is next for Michigan at the cornerback position?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody should be surprised that Dorian Barney flipped. His recruitment has been a wild ride. He committed to Alabama, and then there were rumors about him being assigned to Texas A&M, and then to Penn State. Then he committed to Michigan. Then he visited Georgia Tech, and now he's going to Ole Miss. So I don't know if I.
But EJ, he did tweet his recruitment is now shut down.
If I covered Ole Miss, I would not believe that. But
okay.
Hey, yeah. But he gave us an all-time commitment ceremony with the
all-timer.
We always have that in our hearts. So, as far as losing Barney, he's a talented player. He would fill the nickel role pretty nicely in Michigan's defense. They'll look at a few different guys there, but I think the focus for Michigan has and will be the rest of the cycle to find an elite corner to flip. And that was the case even before Dorian Barney switched over to Ole Miss. They want a true elite corner. And so there are some guys on the top of that board. You look at LSU commit Haven Finney. He's a kid who has been to Michigan in the past. He's continued to keep in contact with the staff at LSU. Their season could go in a couple different directions. So the door could be open there. Kari Adams, who is committed to Notre Dame. I saw him last week, and he's been very adamant on social media that he's committed to Notre Dame, but he's still keeping in contact with Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan. Devon Benjamin, who's committed to Oregon, is another prospect they would love to flip. He would actually fill the nickel role very nicely. He can play some outside corner too. Very versatile skill set for Benjamin. So, those are some big names on the board. You go a little further down, you have Danny Odom, who just picked up an offer. He's committed to Nebraska. So Jamarion Vincent, who's committed to Baylor. So a lot of different options for Michigan at the corner position. I'm not exactly sure who they'll flip. I wouldn't say they're trending for anybody to flip as of today, but I do think Michigan will get the job done. I think they're willing to invest from an NIL perspective. And Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan, he's known as a flip artist. He did it last cycle with Shamari Earls from Georgia, Jordan Young from Clemson, Elijah Dotson from Pitt this cycle, Jordan Deck from Baylor. So if anybody can flip an elite corner, it's Lamar Morgan. And when you have Michigan's NIL backing, when they're serious about a position, they can get the job done.
He's a flip artist. It's kind of like a sandwich artist.
I suppose,
Okay. All right. Let's talk about this weekend. Wisconsin comes to town. Now, it is a noon kickoff. It can be hard for recruits to get into town for that, but it is also a Big Ten matchup. Are we expecting any big name visitors for this one?
Yeah, we're talking about flips and flip artists. Sandwich sounds good, Josh. But I would say some names to keep an eye on from a flip perspective. Linebacker. We talked about corner being a position of need. Linebacker is still a position of need for Michigan this cycle. Two big linebackers coming in, one being Nick Abrams, who is committed to Georgia. Like I said, Michigan flipped Shamari Earls from Georgia last cycle, so they're very capable of beating out Georgia for a kid that's already committed there. I think Nick Abrams, kind of like Shamari Earls last cycle, he fits what Michigan looks for in a kid, and Michigan just checks a lot of boxes for him. He's a high academic student. He really values what Michigan can offer on the education side. His father is a businessman, very well-known businessman in the Baltimore area. I think that business degree at Michigan, the Ross School of Business, that's really hard to beat and something that is very appealing to Nick Abrams. I think style of defense, he sees himself as a great fit at Georgia, but Michigan obviously runs an NFL style scheme under Wink Martindale, who has a ton of NFL experience. So again, I just think Michigan checks a lot of boxes for Nick. He's always, seemed like a Michigan type of kid. If they get the NIL situation right at linebacker, which isn't a position Michigan has traditionally spent on the recruiting trail, they've more used that in the transfer portal. You see their top linebackers are transfers for the most part. I think that with Nick Abrams, he's been a top target for a long time. They could switch up the NIL approach there. Braylon Hodge, another name to know, big riser in the Rivals rankings into the top 200, I believe, currently committed to Michigan State. I don't expect him to stick with Michigan State. And I'm not saying he's going to flip to Michigan. I think this visit will tell us a lot more. There are a lot of contenders rising up in this recruitment: Colorado, Texas, Oregon. So I think Michigan has a really good chance here, depending on how the visit goes. But again, there are different contenders in that recruitment, but I really don't see Michigan State as a true threat to keep him. So those are, the big flip names that are coming in. A lot of underclassmen coming in. The big one to note here is Dakota Warrant. Michigan needs help at the wide receiver position. Warrant is a top 30 player, which means he's in the 5-star range. He's right in Michigan's backyard at Harper Woods High, which is in the Detroit Metro. His coach, Rod Oden, is a Michigan grad. He's a cousin of Michigan defensive back Jacob Oden. So I think that Michigan has done a great job with Dakota early on. And I think Michigan is going to be very aggressive from an NIL perspective. They need to get Bryce Underwood some weapons. They need help in that wide receiver room, and Dakota Warrant a top target for next cycle.
All right, we will be tracking a lot of this intel coming out of the weekend as well, so stay locked into the Inside Scoop. Before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you about a familiar name. Charles Woodson Jr. is an emerging 2027 recruit out of the Orlando, Florida area, and he's picking up offers. Now, Michigan wasn't the first to offer. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Florida State, some others got in there before that, but Michigan is involved. So what's the latest on his recruitment? In the end, do you think that he's going to be a Wolverine?
I do. Our national analyst, Steve Wolfong, put in a prediction, and I might be close to joining him there. I think with me, I wanted to see if Michigan was going to make Charles Woodson Jr. a top priority. Right. It appears they are now going to do so. I think Michigan, like you mentioned, Michigan was not the first to offer Charles Woodson Jr., which to some on the surface, that might seem surprising just because Charles Woodson, I mean, you're talking about a legend, one of the greatest to ever don a winged helmet. You would think Michigan would have offered his son as an infant, but they decided to take their time, which I think was smart. They wanted to make sure, hey, if we're going after Charles Woodson Jr., we want to make sure we don't just like Charles Woodson Jr. because he's Charles Woodson's son. We want to make sure we really like him as a recruit, that he is a guy that we feel can really help this program. And so they took their time, they evaluated him, and then Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan went out to see him during the bye week, actually stopped by his high school at 5 a.m. Now Woodson Jr. coming up for an unofficial visit this weekend. So I do think Michigan is going to push for him. I think, when you are the son of a legend, it's hard to pass up your dad's school. And so I think Michigan should have the inside track. And I think, like I said, Michigan played it smart. They really, really wanted to do their homework on Charles Woodson Jr., and they see him as a fit. They see him as a talented player, aside from him just being the son of Charles Woodson. So overall, I think Michigan obviously in a great spot. Wouldn't be surprised if the Wolverines can continue to add to their 2027 class with Charles Woodson Jr. They already have 3 early commits, and Woodson would be a valuable addition to that class.
Absolutely. All right, Michigan fans, talk to EJ and I. How you guys feeling about this weekend? And more importantly, we hit on a lot of flip targets. Who is your top flip target for the Wolverines? As we're just about 3 months from signing day, let us know. Comment section below.